Any questions, any issues, go ahead and direct them to support@Dr. Carol. So today is day one. So what we are doing, what I'm going to do between now and the end of the year, I'm putting together a series of webinars that address issues that directly affect you as a parent, just everyday parenting issues. And we are starting in this month of April with discipline, because it's a really, really thorny area for many parents, for many caregivers. So that's what we are starting in this month. However, I would like, if you're on our mailing list, if you are, you've liked us on any of our social media pages, please go ahead and let us know what areas you would like addressed, so that now I can start putting together information for that. For those who sent in your forms today, you filled out the forms and registered. I have taken note of the areas of discipline that you indicated that are key areas for you. And within the course of the month, I'll be addressing them as we go. Okay, so I want us to go ahead and get started. And what I'd like you to do, first of all, I usually like to start with, I don't know how you're feeling today. Are you feeling that this is, oh boy, another parenting session? How many have you gone for? Just even during this season, let's say from March last year, okay? How many have you gone for? How much parenting information have you looked for? How many people have you talked to about parenting? So is this just another parenting session? I hope it's not. I hope that the way you're feeling now is, yay, another parenting session, okay? So I know that the people I'm speaking to are not people who are new in the parenting space. I usually say that great parents are not born, they become. So we don't come into parenting as blank slates, okay? We already know. We already have been wired with what it takes to be effective and to raise great children as a parent. But then what happens is that we do need extra skills. We do need support along the way. And really the reason being that we are living in very, very different times now, and things are not really the same as when we were raised or when our parents were raised. So great parents are not born. But what I really believe is that great parents become, and BE for me is very key. So we are not here about doing specific acts. We are here to become. And for me, becoming is a process. So as we start, what I'd like you to do is to take a moment and write down. If you have a pen and paper, write it down. If you don't, keep it at the back of your mind somewhere. Write down 3 things you want to become as a parent or a caregiver. 3 things to become. And when I talk about becoming, remember, it is a process. The ing is very important. So if you're writing it down, I'd like you to write, I am becoming. Like for me, I am becoming more purposeful. I am becoming more aware, okay? What are you becoming as a parent? It's very important for us to write our intentions whenever we start any journey, or even as we continue with whatever journeys. It's important for us to take note of our intentions, because those become sort of the markers. And even as we are going through this month of webinars, I would really like you to keep checking back and ask yourself, am I becoming this? Am I becoming calm? Am I becoming better at communicating? Am I becoming a listener, a better listener? Am I becoming farmer? Okay, farmer as in a more farm. I'm not just wishy-washy. So who are you becoming? Just take a moment and write down 3 things you want to become, because there's really great power and value in writing things down. And what I'm doing is I'm inviting you to commit to these 3 things in the coming weeks. Check yourself and see where you are at. So you can write more than 3, but let's get started with 3. And if anything else comes, then we can we can keep going. I invite you also to be interactive in these sessions. Like I said earlier, when it comes to questions, I would like you to wait until at least around 8:45, 8:50, then you can throw in your questions just in case it has been answered. But I mean, in case it has been answered as we go. However, if you have a comment, if you resonate with something, if you have an aha moment, go ahead and chat, make this interactive, and let's do this together. Then finally, we are recording these sessions and we will make this specific free webinar session available to you when you come to our website, drcaro.co.ke. We'll make that available to you. So, drama-free discipline series, okay? And just so that we remind ourselves, for those who, I'm sure you received communication about this. For the next couple of months, we'll be holding a series of webinars with different topics and different themes. So also let us know what areas you would like addressed, but specifically for this month, we are looking at discipline. I call it the D word. It's an area that a lot of parents have a lot of, it's just a murky space. You know, there's no clarity there. Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? What do I do to get these behaviors to change? Am I ruining my children? Am I letting them get away with too much? What is the right thing to do? So I thought, let's start with that. And then the next week, now today we're just going to talk about the discipline mistakes we make. We're going to unpack the myths surrounding discipline, because for me, it's very important that as you live, if this is the only session you attend, okay, and you're not able to do the next 3, it's important that you are grounded. At least your mindset is, you get a shift of your mindset when it comes to discipline. Because if we have the wrong perception about discipline, then again, we find ourselves in these cycles. I'm sure that flyer was caught many of us. We find ourselves nagging, reminding, repeating, yelling, and then back again to nagging, repeating, reminding, and yelling. So the next week, we are going to look at what do children really need. I believe that, and even from a psychological perspective, we believe that behavior is a communication of a need. We want to change our views about discipline by getting a deeper understanding of what really causes what we regard as misbehavior. Okay, so what do children really need? If we are able to identify those needs that children have, could we perhaps, for example, be able to actually stop some of these misbehaviors, what we consider misbehaviors, from happening? So that's what we will look at in our next session, that is April 15th. And then the following session on the 22nd, we're just gonna talk about how to create the right environment for discipline. How am I showing up? How am I showing up as a person, as a human? What is going on with me? Okay, then finally, the big question, okay, to spank or not to spank, Dr. Caro? Just give me that one answer and I will take it and I will run with it and I will focus on it. But is that the question? I don't know. So I hope you will stick around until the end of the month so that we really get to ask ourselves, should I spank? Should I not spank? And even as you're looking at the arrangement and the order of this session, what you will realize is that I don't give you tips and strategies for discipline at the start. If anything, if you are looking for tips, specific tips and strategies for discipline, you might find them in the last session. But I'm going to explain to you today why tips, strategies, and tools are not really the important thing, are not really the thing to look for, okay? So again, if that's all you do, just attend this session, you will still have a deeper understanding as to why the tips and tools and strategies are not necessarily the thing we should. So my desire is that as we interact this month, you will really get a broader perspective of what discipline is. You will have a deeper understanding, because for me, my desire with parents is not so that we can produce perfect children, okay? But so that we can produce healthy children. I'm committed to helping you develop better relationships with your children. And that's the focus of all the webinars and the sessions that I do, including the program that I do. So today we're looking at drama-free discipline, and specifically the discipline mistakes that we make. And guess what? We're going to jump right into it. Before I do that, let me just quickly look at the chat and see if there's anything that I need to address. Okay, there isn't. So let's keep going. Remember, if you have a specific question, you can send it to support@Dr. and then that will be addressed. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into it. And we are going to look at mistake number 1. Run rules. Mistake number 1 is misunderstanding the real purpose of discipline. If there's anything else, if there's nothing else you get out of this session, please get a better understanding of discipline. We have what we have believed about discipline, then we have what discipline really, really is. Okay, and I like to make things practical and relatable, and I hope that we will be able to achieve that today. So as I dig right in, the first one is misunderstanding the real purpose of discipline. Now, in my work with parents, I've come across some ideas about discipline, which I also held for a very long time, and I still struggle. I really still struggle to unlearn. There's a lot of unlearning that I'm still doing in this space. And I know that none of us have arrived and are there. And so I'm inviting you to unlearn with me. So in my work with parents, I've come across some ideas about discipline that really get in the way of us actually experiencing what we parents would regard as success in this area. Okay? And so let's really clarify what discipline is. So these are some of them, and these are just a few, okay? Discipline has to be emotional and combative for it to be effective. So that's why my course is called, my sessions are called drama-free discipline, because we approach discipline with a lot of uncertainty, with a lot of, we don't like to do it. You know, we're just like, I hate to do this, but let me just do it. And it really shouldn't be that way, okay? But the reason is because we really, at the back of our minds, we believe that it has to be emotional, there has to be drama, there has to be a lot of crying and yelling for it to really be effective. Now, I know I'm not talking, many of us, we're 73 here, okay? So many of us are not in this space, but it's those other parents out there, okay? But the reality is we have come to believe that. And that is also because of how we have been brought up. There probably was a lot of shaming and embarrassment around discipline, and it was done at a whim, okay? And we use words like, I was really straightened out, you know? So there's just this really extreme terms that are used. Discipline needs to be severe for it to be effective. The child has to feel really bad. And I have met parents who say, you know what? My child is no longer responding to my discipline. And I ask them, what do you mean by that? And they say, you know, I'll give them a consequence, like you are off the screen for tomorrow. And they look at me and they'll be like, okay, then they move on, okay? And they will sit there and they will really try very hard to show the parent that I'm fine. But what I tell them and what you need to understand is that if you have a broader view about discipline, you don't really have to get the child to feel bad about what they have done. Okay, and we will still unpack and say, what is this really? What is discipline really? bad, or making them look sorry, or very, very apologetic. So that's another mistaken idea about discipline. Another one is it has to be immediate, or the effect will be lost and the child will repeat the behavior. So for every infraction, okay, let me call them infraction, for every misbehavior, we punish, we discipline it. Then we go to the next one, we discipline. If you just let it slide, you guys, this child will not learn a lesson. So that's a mistaken idea about discipline. Not all discipline has to be immediate. And there are those which could be immediate, okay? And we will unpack that again as we go in the course of the month. But not all of it. If we really understand the background behind discipline, we realize we actually don't have to do it immediately, because there's so many other factors that go into that moment. One of them including how you're feeling yourself. What are your levels of frustration or anger? Okay, if they're high, then really it doesn't matter what kind of lesson you need to teach, you need to step back. Okay, it's about demanding compliance. So you will push your child until they do what it is you want them to do. That's when you'll be like, now I have discipline. They have done what I wanted them to do. Now I have discipline. Again, that's a misconception. It's not about demanding compliance from a child. We also believe that, discipline is that one thing you do to get your child to behave better. And that's what I get from parents. Just give me just two things that I can do to change this behavior quickly. Okay? And I'm like, no, discipline is not that one thing. Like 2 spanks. When I've done 2 spanks, then I'll get it. Again, it is not that one thing you do to get your child to change their behavior. We also believe that discipline is equal to a consequence. So unless we have given a consequence, we haven't disciplined. Unless we have given a consequence, we haven't disciplined. Discipline is equal to a consequence. That again is a mistaken idea. And this just are a few. It's only successful if it leads to instant obedience, very much related to the one about demanding compliance, okay? And when I was going through the stuff that you have asked in terms of what are your discipline related issues, some of the things I was finding was they don't obey immediately. I just want a child who is able to do things when I tell them, they do them instantly. There is a place for that, okay? There is a place for that. And again, we'll talk about that when we are unpacking consequences. But it's not successful just because your child has obeyed instantly. A lot of these mistaken beliefs, and I want you to interact with them. Just take a moment and interact with these ideas. Many of them, we resonate with them and we have believed them to be true. Okay, some of us here, I'm not talking about everyone here, but some of us here actually have believed them to be true. And you want to be able to say, I have only disciplined when I've given a consequence. I have only disciplined when I know the child is looking bad, feeling bad and looking like they're really sorry. I've only disciplined when I feel some sense of relief. And you realize sometimes in many cases, when we are thinking this way, we make discipline about us. When I feel better about what I have done, then I have been successful. But then again, we find ourselves, even if I've done that, if I chappered and now I feel relieved, okay, if I might still feel guilty later, okay, or if I give my child a 1-hour lecture, and I will feel a sense of relief at that point. But most of the time we find ourselves feeling guilty later. So many of them are really as a result of how we were brought up. And so we need to go back and ask ourselves then, what then is discipline? If discipline is not those things, what then is discipline? So for those, if you have a phone with you, a different gadget, you can check now or you can check later, but I want you to check out the synonyms of discipline. So if you go to Google, just Google synonyms of discipline. Synonyms of discipline. And let me share those that I have come across. along the way. You know, discipline, some of the synonyms is preparation, cultivate, reprimand, order, direct, control, okay, systematic, coach, repetition, train, practice. Let me see if there's another one. Drill, and then we have nurture. So again, just interact with these synonyms of discipline, guys, and let us reason together. So is there perchance a possibility that there's way more to discipline than what we have believed? If we are thinking about terms like repetition, drill, but then we're looking at nurture, we're looking at regulation, we're looking at cultivate, we're looking at reprimand, practice, train, then there's systematic, there's preparation. So just take a moment and interact again with these synonyms, because my goal today is just to expand your view about discipline just for this evening, okay? Because with a better understanding, you know, we perish because of lack of knowledge. So we struggle in our discipline space because we do not have enough knowledge, okay? So what really is discipline if we're looking at all these words? So because we can't use all of them, I usually choose to look at 3 areas, okay, that help us really understand discipline. So from here going forward, when you think about discipline, think about these 3 words: learning, process, and disciple. All these other things fall under these 3, whether it's reprimand or drill or cultivate or nurture and all that. They will fall in any of these 3 categories, okay? And the word discipline, when it comes to learning, it originates from a Latin word, which means instruction or to learn, okay? So when we're thinking about learning, we're talking about just think about, I want you to take a moment and think about everything that characterizes a learning environment, whether it's in a school environment, whether you have gone, what characterizes a learning environment? There's training. Those things are repetitive. So remember, for those who are saying, I don't want to keep repeating to my child over and over again, maybe you may have to, up to some point. But let's not think that you can only just tell your child something once and they learn it and they can move on. It's step by step, so it's systematic. It's age appropriate. So sometimes maybe there are some things we expect of our children, but maybe they're not old enough, okay? There's rewards. So learning environment has both rewards and motivation, but it also has reprimands and consequences. And some of these consequences might be both negative, some of them might be positive. In any learning space, environment, there's learning and unlearning. You are equipping the child. Learning has to have an end game. But one of the things we need to remember is that learning is long-term, okay? Learning is long-term. Let's not be in a hurry with this discipline thing to just nip things in the bud. And we like to use that word. I just need to nip this thing in the bud and move on. Have you considered other things? Have you considered their age, whether it's age appropriate? If you want to think about learning, I want you to think about discipline. I want you to ask yourself this: what is this child learning? Okay? Whether they're throwing a tantrum, whether they are not doing their homework, whether they are lying, whatever it is, there's an environment, a certain environment that has characterized or has led to that behavior. So what is this child learning? So discipline is learning, okay? And, okay, I think my cursor has frozen. Just give me there we go. Sorry, now I have clicked too much. All right. So what I like to say here is that a misbehaving child is a child who needs to learn something. So the next time you see that child rolling around at the mall, rolling on the floor, crying for whatever, whether it's a toy or a ball, rather than judge, the first thing you should ask yourself is, what does this child need to learn? The moment you put learning in that space, it makes you step back to think about discipline as a process, okay? Which is the second term. And process, it's continuous. We are always looking for ways to improve, ways to do things different. We're not stuck up on one thing, progress. But when it comes to process, we also remember that time is key, okay? So there's time. We have to give discipline time for it to have to bear the fruit that we desire for it to bear. So the question you need to ask is, how much time have I allowed for the lesson to sink? If you want your child to learn how to brush their teeth, have you thought about it as a learning process? Have you thought about it as a process in terms of how much time, how many times have we practiced it? If you want them to learn how to make a bed, whatever it is that you want your child to learn, what you need to remember is childhood is your opportunity to plant the seed and not to harvest the fruit. Please take a moment and remember that. Whatever age your child is, even if they're 13 or 15, use that as an opportunity to plant the seed. Let's not be in a hurry to bear fruits, okay? And as you go, you will start seeing those fruits. But please focus on the fact that the child, you're growing, we are growing a human being. We're not fixing a piece of furniture. So please give it the process. In fact, many of you may or may not be aware that the human brain doesn't take up to 25 years for it to mature, okay? So can you imagine you expecting your 6-year-old to be able to do certain stuff now so that you can move on with life? And they still have another 19 years to go. So what we say is that because it's the front part of the brain that has not fully matured, the part of the brain that is very active, and okay, that's why the tantrums, that's why the back talk, the attitude, but reasoning capacity, this is your opportunity as a parent to act as the front brain for your child. You know, the front part of the brain is the one that is used for reasoning, okay? So be that for the child during this season and invite them and teach them step by step as you go. So remember, childhood is your opportunity to plant the seed and not to harvest the fruit. The third thing we need to remember is that discipline is about disciple. The root word in discipline is disciple, okay? And you know, who is discipling this child? What is my child observing? Okay? What a disciple does is they guide. So I'm asking myself as a parent, have I been guiding? Have I been teaching? Have I been leading? Have I been modeling, encouraging, training? Am I being consistent in that space? And I'm not bringing these things up so that you start feeling guilty that you haven't done it, okay? We lead from a place where, we don't lead from a place of perfection. So even as I'm asking you to be a discipler to your child, you're not discipling from a place of perfection. You don't have to know how to make the bed perfectly for you to decide to disciple your child to know how to make a bed. So who is my child discipling? So discipling to disciplining. So again, remember, I'm just changing our view and our mindset about discipline so that we can approach this differently, okay? So just remember those three: learning, process, disciple. And I hope that when we see this, then we realize we've got a lot that we need to put into for us to get the results that we desire. And why are we doing this? Why are we thinking, we're giving ourselves a broader perspective of discipline? So that we no longer come at the child. Usually we come at the child. What have you done? You need to do this, ta-da-da-da. But we begin to come alongside the child. Are you coming alongside your child? Are you holding them alongside the process as you disciple them, as you're teaching them these things? Are you telling yourself, you know what, we don't have to get it right now, okay? What is going on with you? All right. So what I will ask you is to begin to come alongside. Are you coming alongside your child? Those things that you wrote and said, these are my discipline issues. Are you coming alongside the child? And the whole process this month is to teach you how to come alongside, to give you very, very specific tips on how to come alongside your child as opposed to coming at them. So that was our first mistake, misunderstanding the real purpose of discipline. And I'm hoping that now we are aware that there's more to discipline than we have imagined. So let's look at the second mistake, okay? The second mistake is choosing a discipline strategy over the relationship. Choosing a discipline strategy over the relationship. Many times when our children misbehave, we want to quickly jump into a strategy that we can use so that we can hold on to that strategy and say, this one will ensure that the misbehavior does not happen. This one will ensure that this mistake doesn't happen again. So what do? We go to Google, okay? And then we go and search. So I did a search on Google on effective discipline strategies. Guess what I got? 209 million results in 0.69 seconds, okay? Now, the thing is, you know what? These results are okay. I actually have absolutely nothing against these results. Okay, but the thing is, when we go to Google or we ask people or advise or even attend parenting seminars and classes, to be honest, there's nothing new under the sun. When you go and read those things, whatever you read there is not going to be a totally rocket science, groundbreaking strategy. It's probably something you've had, you've tried, someone else has, okay? And the problem is that when we go to Google and when we go to ask people, the only thing is that what you will get is strategies and tips, but they don't give you them, okay? And I'm just going to sample a few of the things that I have come across. I have tried it myself, and I have also been able to try and use, okay? So we're told, you know what? Use timeouts at a certain age. You need to show and tell, okay? You need to give consequences. And these are the consequences you should give the child. No, but you need to withdraw privileges, especially teenagers. Just withdraw privileges and they will get it. When it comes to screen time, set limits, guys. Catch them doing good. When you focus on catching them doing something good, you're providing a great environment for them. You have to be consistent, mommy. You have to be consistent. But then, children of nowadays, you need to negotiate and dialogue with them. Someone else says, you know, you don't negotiate or dialogue with children in this day and age. Be your child's friend. Do not be your child's friend. Be firm and kind. Be the role model. Spare the rod and spoil the child. Never spank your child. Don't do that. Then someone else tells you there's a certain window of opportunity, you guys. If you miss that window, quisha. There's no going back. or you need to hear your children out. Give them space for them to talk. So again, I just want you to interact with some of these strategies, and I'm going to ask you, is there anything new here? This is part of the 209 million results. Is there something you have never considered here? You may not have done it, but at least you have thought about it. So these strategies are great. Many of them are based on science. Many of them are based on experience. And this is what a veteran parent will tell you, okay? Even now, when you just post on Facebook and say, you guys help me, what do I do with my child? 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll get a whole list of people explaining how they do it, okay? And so I have absolutely nothing against information that is out there, okay? But I'm asking, why then are we still finding ourselves in the same spaces where we are attending this session, okay? Are the strategies the issues? The strategies are great, okay? Maybe it's lack of enough information. Maybe we need another 200 million results. Or maybe there's too much information, you guys. Too much information on Google. Different times and contexts, and these things may not work for us, or the things that worked then are not working now, or maybe it's because of technology. What is the problem? So this is what I have discovered. The issue is not so much in the strategies and the things that I have shared. The issue is in the dynamics of our relationships with our children, which again, I want us to remind ourselves of the second mistake that we make, and that is focusing on strategy over relationships. So once we have a better understanding of what discipline is, okay, by looking at it as learning, as process, and as discipline, then the next thing we really need to do is forget for a moment, forget about those strategies. Let us focus on the relationships. Okay, and that's what I do with parents. I'm like, for a moment, let's stop talking about your children's behaviors. Let's begin to unpack the dynamics of your relation, how you're relating with your children, because that is where the issue is. Okay, and I'll give you ways of how to do it in this first session, but throughout the month, we are actually going to talk about how to harness the relationship so that we get better results when it comes to behavior. Better results is different from immediate results, okay? Better results over time. Remember, it's a process. So even research on child development tells us how important relationships are. And virtually all parenting dilemmas boil down to one thing: relationship. So for those of us who desire our children to be happy, who desire children to develop leadership skills, to have meaningful relationships, to do well in school, to be resilient, to live a purposeful life, to have emotionally, what we really need to look at is relationships. But specifically, look at whether at least one person shows up for this child. So I can see we are 99 here, and probably there are more if you joined by the website. But the reality is that each one of us here is an individual. You don't necessarily need to have the other person on board for you to be effective moving forward. It's always great if you have support. It always makes a difference if 2 people, 3 people, 4 people are reading from the same page. But what research is telling us, you who is seated here, who is watching this, who is listening to this, you are that at least one person. If you learn to show up for your child, all these results that you desire, happiness, leadership skills, they will still come to pass. So it's not me who has said it, it's research that's shown over and over. And that's why for me, if there is anything that really I want parents to have, is the ability to create the right environment so that they have better relationships with their children. So that when your child is away and they're 25 and it's Christmas holidays, they cannot wait to come home, okay? They're not avoiding your calls. We want to be able to put our focus away from those things that we consider success and achievement to how to ground ourselves in a better relationship with our children. And that's what I really desire to get out of this session. as well. So what does showing up mean? Showing up means you, being that at least one person, you are committed to developing a healthy relationship with each of your children. You have 6 children, you have a commitment for each one of them. Okay, you're seeing them uniquely and differently. Okay, so in this second mistake, really what I'm saying here is that the real discipline strategy should not focus on those 209 million results. It should focus on a healthy relationship. Do you have the ability to provide the right environment as a parent for a better and healthy relationship between your children to take place? Do you have that? So let's throw away the strategies for a moment. And I'm inviting you to begin, because everything else is a fruit that flows out of a healthy relationship. So rather than focusing on stress, focus on relationship. Now, are strategies important? Yes. And we will talk about strategies as we keep going, because they are important. But without putting it in an environment of relationship, we are not going to be effective. Okay? So mistake number 3, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one because I'd like you to do an exercise, is when we react rather than respond. Many times we are reactive parents. We are not responsive parents. Not just parents, human beings. We find ourselves more reactive than responsive. And the tips you're getting are not going to just help you in your parenting, they're going to help you in your other relationships. So are you a reactive parent, or are you a parent who responds? Okay? So a parent who responds is a parent who is self-aware. And who is a parent who is self-aware? A parent who is self-aware is the one who learns to be conscious of their own inner environment. What's going on with me during a discipline moment? I call them intense moments. If you have watched my video called I talk about a very intense moment I had with my son one time, and I call it a ndengu moment. You can go and check it out on YouTube. I've talked at length about it. But in that moment where you're having an intense moment or a ndengu moment, are you conscious of your own? And what do we mean by being self-aware? I'm inviting you to step back away from those discipline strategies and begin to ask yourself this question. What am I bringing into this discipline moment with my child? When I've just received a report that my child who has been telling me for 2 straight weeks, they come home and they tell me, Mommy, I finished my homework. I finished my homework. And then you get a report from school. For the last 2 weeks, they have not done a single homework, whether it's maths or geography or whatever it is, they haven't done it. At that moment, how you are showing up makes the biggest difference when it comes to whether you'll find yourselves in the same cycles. What am I bringing into this moment with my child? What conversations are going on in my mind right now as I'm listening to this deputy principal tell me about all these things, or I'm reading this letter from school about what my child did? What conversations are going on in my mind right now? Do we even pause to think about that? We don't. How am I interpreting my child's behavior? And what have I believed about this situation? What have I believed about children who start lying at 6 years? That they'll end up in jail? Is that what I believed? I don't know, okay? And so I invite you to begin, because if you're not asking yourselves these questions, then you are not going to, you're going to find yourselves in the same cycles. This is the more difficult route to take, parents. It's a longer route to take. But remember, for me, my concern is your relationship with your child in the long term. My concern is that you grow as your child grows. And if you want to grow, you have to step back and begin to ask yourself these really, really critical questions. Am I reacting or am I responding? So in the next few minutes, we may not take long. I'm just going to ask you to take a moment to ask yourself, am I a reactive parent or am I a responsive parent? Just take a minute. Some of you could be driving. I don't know if we could still be driving right now because of curfew, but maybe you're somewhere where you may not be able to do this exercise. That's okay. Just take note for later, okay? And remember, we will share this recording later on our website, but just want you to breathe in and take a moment and breathe out. And I want you to think about a very specific incident that's a persistent area of conflict between you and one of your children. So think about one child, not all 3 or 6 of them, okay? One child, one persistent area of conflict, whether it is leaving lights on, which is a persistent area for me here, okay? Or whatever it is, whatever issue it is, what is it? Now, I want you to narrow down to what actually happened. So we're narrowing it down, a specific thing. Now we are moving away from saying my child is lazy, my child is irresponsible, my child doesn't listen. What I usually invite parents to do is just give me one event that happened that has stayed vivid in your mind, okay? So the question is, what was your reaction? How did you react? Remember, I'm just inviting you into a place of self-awareness. So I know probably came here to talk about discipline. We've talked a little bit about that, but I will always direct it back to you guys, okay? And I hope now you get to understand why. So maybe some of you have come across this concept called the iceberg, which basically says whatever you see is 10% and what we don't see makes up 90%. So success is the tip of the iceberg. People see you glamorous and glitzy and looking really nice, but they do not know the sweat, the blood, the tears that it has taken. So most of the time we do not see. And even when we are talking about our children's misbehaviors, 90% don't understand why they have misbehaved. So because today we are not talking about your kids, we're talking about you, I want you to start thinking about what your reaction was. And I'll just share a few of the reactions that I have come across. Now, I have adopted the iceberg into what I call the Heartberg, which invites you to begin to start asking yourself, what's the condition of my heart? It's just to invite you into a deeper place of self-awareness, okay? Because you get to learn so much about yourself if you just pause and reflect, because responding starts with you. So whatever reaction you had, your children are not the real reason for us yelling. So if you want to stop yelling, if you want to stop reacting, if you want to stop giving 2-hour lectures, just remember that it's not your children who are the real reason. The real reason lies inside of you, and it would help so much if you are able to understand that, because all that happens is that our children trigger what's already in us. Once we're able to understand ourselves better, then we're able to handle our children with more confidence, okay? So what's really in my heart? Okay, so I've just sampled a few of the reactions. The first 10% is, how did you react? So let me just take you through a few of the reactions that parents have told me. You know, I yelled, I shouted, I went into a lot of things, I talked endlessly, I gave my child threats which I didn't even follow through, I pumped them, you guys, or I sent the child away, I fired off a series of punishment, I gave them undeserved consequences, I think I went too far. Or sometimes I was just passive. I did nothing. Now, either way, whether you were passive or you did this other aggressive one, it's still later on when you are reflecting, you are like, no, I could have done things differently. So we are looking for those kinds of intense reactions because it's those moments that we learn the most about ourselves, okay? So where do our reactions come from? So maybe some of you resonate with this. These are some of the reactions I myself have had, okay, over time. As I'm continuing to learn to be more self-aware, I'm dropping a lot of these things. I'm learning to be more reflective and to pause. But before you had that reaction, you felt something. And most of the time, for us to be triggered so much to yell or to rant or to talk endlessly, we must have felt a lot of anger, okay? But what I usually tell parents is that anger is a secondary feeling. It's not a primary feeling, meaning that there's something else that caused you to feel a certain way, feel vulnerable, feel weak. But anger is the only one you can resort to, because when I show my child I'm angry, they will comply quickly. So most of the time, I'm not going to tell my son, I'm feeling so helpless right now. I'm so fearful. Oh gosh, I'm feeling so guilty. I'm not going to say that, because that'll make me feel and look vulnerable. So we quickly resort to anger. Now, what am I doing here? I'm trying to invite you guys to be a little bit more self-aware, to be a little bit more reflective about why we do certain things, okay? So when you feel like you're thrown into anger many times, there's a primary feeling that goes there. And here is a list of them: helpless, fearful, worried, anxious, panic, disappointed, felt hopeless, embarrassed. So again, I want you to look at these feelings. If any of them resonate with you, you can write them down, okay? And then I can go to the next thing to ask: where did my feelings come from? Okay, and now you're welcome to start putting questions or whatever it is that you would like, and then I will ask Wangare to read them out at some point. Okay, so what were your thoughts? Our feelings are connected to thoughts, okay? What were my thoughts? What are thoughts? Thoughts are basically conversations about how we have interpreted our children's behaviors, okay? So you can say, he's doing it to make me angry. Listen, guys, a feeling is tied to a thought. And it's because of thinking that way that we felt that way, and that's why we reacted to our children. So again, without having to read all of them, I just want you to interact with some of these conversations that sometimes we have to interpret our children's behaviors. I'm failing. I've felt that many times when I've encountered a moment with my son. I'm saying, oh my gosh, I need to do enough. I've not been doing enough. Or I don't have much time left. Or it's making me look bad. Let's be real. Let's be candid. Let's be authentic about where we are at. Okay? And how we interpret our children's behaviors. Okay? Then, where do our thoughts come from? Our thoughts come from our core beliefs, okay? And core beliefs are essentially the things that I usually call them templates. You know, it's like an operating system. An operating system, for example, Samsung operating system is Android, okay? Or a Mac or an Apple product is going to be an iOS. So there are certain beliefs that we have developed over time. They are like unconscious. I call them unconscious from a script that you're not even aware that you're reading. And that's where our core beliefs come from. They come from our experiences in the past, our experiences in the present. And so these are just a sample of some of the core beliefs that I have held, and also working with parents. And there are so many. So if you come across my book, I discuss this in detail, Parenting with Your Heart in Mind, and to just unpack each of the core beliefs, and we look at them and see where do they actually come from. Okay, so most of the time, our thoughts come from these core beliefs. Where do our core beliefs come from? They come from issues in our past, the things we have gone through, and issues that we are currently going through. And it takes a more intentional process for us to uncover these issues and to understand them, okay? So again, Parenting with Your Heart in Mind explores these issues in depth. We explore issues in the past, we explore issues in the present. But my point in this session is to just invite you to begin to be a parent who responds, begin to respond, as opposed to a parent who is reactive. Because when you're forever reactive, it doesn't work well for the relationship, okay? So we usually like to deal with behavior, and we deal with behavior at the surface because that's what we are used to doing. And most of our experiences in parenting are baggage driven. We bring into this space, we carry unresolved issues, both from our past and from our present experiences. And our children, when they misbehave, you guys, what they do is that they trigger us. They trigger already things that are in us. And so we need not feel guilty about our reactions. We need to take a moment and say, hey, this is something I need to work on. It should just be a reminder of the things we need to work on. So even as I'm inviting you to do this, I'm not inviting you to get into a place of guilt. Get to a place of enlightenment, a place of awareness of, oh, I need to work on this. Oh, this is probably where it's coming from. Approach it with an open-mindedness, not without judgment. And that's what self-awareness is about. You approach things not from a place of judgment, but a place of flexibility and open-mindedness. So we need to get a place where, rather than react to our children, we are responding to them. Now, mistake number 4 to 7, I'll just rush through them because there's really nothing much to explain, because they come out of the things that I've already talked about. So if we're not focusing on what the importance of discipline, if we're not focusing on the relationship, if we're not focusing on our self-awareness, we find ourselves believing the worst before we let our children explain, okay? So sometimes the situation is as bad as it really is, but sometimes things are not as bad as they seem. So we need, before we come at our child, listen to them. They might have a good explanation, okay? So it's really frustrating when people don't believe you. So you can imagine how your child feels when you don't believe them. It's like you're telling them, I don't care, whatever it is. So you believe the worst before you let your children explain. Another mistake that we find ourselves making is when we allow an audience to determine what we are supposed to do. Most of us have really this thing, our children's behaviors are an extension of our ego. So when they misbehave, then it makes us feel bad. So we worry too much about what other people might think, and especially when it comes to how we parent our children. There's a lot of judgment around parenting, you guys. And I'm asking you guys, let's stop it. Let's stop being so judgmental about parenting, because you do not know people's stories. Because when you do that, then you also begin to judge yourself, even become our own worst critics. So it's not fair to your children to discipline differently just because someone else is watching. Because you want to impress your in-laws, for example, or you want to show your sibling that you've got it together. So that's another one, when we allow an audience to determine what we do. Sometimes when we talk too much, and we've talked about how we can talk too much in our reactivity, and then finally, when we focus on the behavior and not on the why behind the behavior. And actually, this will be the focus of our next session, which is going to be next Thursday, because we are going to ask, why do children behave the way they do? And what do we need? So as I conclude, I just then was saying, okay, I've given you a lot of information. I hope it's been helpful. But Dr. Carol, so how do I move forward? Okay, so in the next few sessions that we will have, I'm going to really be addressing this area of, are you a carpenter or are you a farmer? And if you've been around my sessions or my videos, you know that I talk a lot about how to show up as a farmer as opposed to a carpenter. You know, so The difference between a carpenter parent and a farmer parent is that a carpenter already has a perfect picture of how things should go, perfect picture of how discipline should be. So once they already have that, a perfect picture of how children should behave. So we are always parenting with that picture at the back of our heads, okay? So every behavior you see, it just needs to be shown, to be plain, to be fixed. A carpenter has to be precise. You measure twice, then you cut once. And that's why children must obey immediately, okay? That's a carpenter mentality, okay? So a carpenter mentality makes us come at our children to fix them quickly. It's very predictable. You want things to happen quickly so you can move on with life. So you're rigid, you stick to a plan. If possible, you want all your 6 children to go through the same process, okay? But at the end of the day, what you have is what I call a lifeless, inanimate, but very beautiful piece of furniture, okay? But it's inanimate. So enter the farmer, and that's what I'm inviting you, from becoming a reactive carpenter to a responsive farmer. Because as a farmer, you also have a vision of what you want, but you don't have the exact specifications. So what you do is you are careful to break ground. You're careful to sow water. You are reflective of asking yourself, to sow the seed, sorry. You're reflective to ask yourself, what kind of seed do harvest do I want? If I want a harvest of responsibility, process is key, guys, okay? So I put a seed of responsibility and I nurture, I provide the right environment. There's time for pruning, manure. So a farmer knows parenting is messy, but a farmer knows that my job is to provide a nurturing environment. Some seasons are really exciting. Our kids do things and they surprise us and we get so excited. But we need to understand as farmers that some seasons are actually difficult. Let's embrace those difficult moments as much as we are embracing the easy ones as well. Parenting is not supposed to be easy. You're just supposed to show up, to be reflective, to know that this is a journey you're going through and you will walk with this child until, even after they leave, okay? So there are seasons where, of course, you know that even though you're not seeing the plant, it's the time to sprout will come. But ultimately, what I like to say is that the farmer knows that there are other forces at play. And so you determine that I am going to do this journey of parenting with faith, with hope, with trust. I'll keep doing what I need to do, guys. I'm not going to expect immediate results. And that's what I want to invite you to do, to begin to transition from being carpenter parents to farmer parents. I am not 100% farmer, but at least I'm a little bit on the journey from being a carpenter towards being more of a farmer. And I don't think anyone can ever be 100% carpenter or 100% farmer. So what does responding take? It takes us to pause, to ask ourselves, what am I feeling? How am I interpreting this behavior? What do I believe about my child? What do I believe about myself and my capability to raise this child? What do I believe about this situation? Responding invites us to reflect and ask questions like, what does this child need? And we'll talk about the needs of children in our next session. Has this child been trained? Or maybe this child is just going through a time of discouragement and they need a little bit of watering, okay? So that they can begin to bloom. And then once we do that, then we are able to respond. You're responding more as a farmer, you're providing a conducive environment, and you are focusing on building, nurturing relationships with your children. So I have come to the end. I just want to remind you, you can come to our website, drcarol.co.ke, and you can get a copy of our book there. I'm going to give you some time to ask questions, to give your comments. We still have, we still have quite a bit of time because we are ending at 9:30. It's just 10 after 9. I hope I didn't go too fast. I would really like feedback on that as well for the other sessions as we keep going. But I just want to remind you that we are having these 4 sessions. We've just had our first free session, and thank you so much for attending. And the next week, on the 15th, we are going to look at what do children really need. So the next 3 sessions are going to be paid sessions, as you can see from the flyers. Please get in touch with us. Let us know, give us feedback about this session as well. And then we will also have a session on the 22nd and another one on the 29th. So that is the session we're having next week. And I want to just take a moment to breathe. And I can now invite questions and comments. Thank you. Questions, comments? Any questions? Okay, so I'm just going to read. Pausing sounds really ideal. Indeed, in responding. Came on board late, but learning a lot. Focusing on the behavior and not the why is a light bulb moment, you guys. And next week, we're going to really zero in on that, okay? The why behind the behavior, okay? This parenting journey needs lots and lots of prayers too. Of course, not easy. And just think about it, even a farmer, when a farmer puts seed in the ground, it's not a guarantee that they'll get a harvest, okay? So that's why when I talk about the farmer parent, I say it's a journey of faith, a journey of trust, and a journey of hope. It's not easy at all. How do we react? Exactly, like what should I do in this moment? Okay, so I don't know who asked this question. I can only see your gadget, but how do we react as parents in these moments? That's why it's very different for the different parents. I think the thing here is to remember, first of all, if you begin to learn to practice to respond, then you get more clear about the things you need to do. Do you remember those 209 million results that I talked about? Now, those 209 million results are yours for the taking. You can pick any of those, but just remember to step back, first of all, reflect, think about what you need to do before you respond. And that's why you realize, I mean, even as you work with me, you realize I really don't give people tips. Like, this is what you should do, because every person's journey is very different. I don't know to what extent you react. And why do you react? Maybe there are issues that you need to deal with in your past. And so I invite you to go back there and sort that place out. Now, once you begin to learn to be more self-aware and more reflective, you actually begin to be very creative about the discipline strategies that you can use, okay? So exactly, the question here is, how do we react as parents exactly? I cannot tell you the exact part. What I'm inviting you to do is to begin to learn to, first of all, pause, respond. In the process of responding, you will pick that which works for you, because there are many amazing tips and tools out here, okay? And I know that there are some direct messages. For example, I'll not say your name, but I live separately with my kids. They're mostly with the father. I find it difficult to maintain their discipline as we do not have the same discipline style. What can you advise? Very, very important area, such a thorny area. And it's not just even living separately with your children. For the person who asked this, it's also sometimes you're in the same house, but your discipline styles are very, very different, okay? The only thing I will tell you just real quick is that what you need to understand, remember you are that one person learning to show up. If you learn to show up as that one person and you learn to be full and wholesome and consistent in the decisions that you make, eventually, the key word here being eventually, remember you are being farmers, eventually children respond to the parent who is consistent. So let's not try so much to bring the other person on board to think like us, okay? They are coming from wherever they are coming from. They also have their own experiences. They have very valid reasons why they're doing the things they're doing. But let's first of all focus on our own reactions. Let us focus on our own health, wellness. Let's focus on our own self-awareness first before we begin to now, when we begin to be consistent in the decisions we are making, whether it's a routine you want, let it not matter what the other person does. If they are coming to two places, so if they come to your place, just continue with your routine. Continue with what it is you need to do. They will fight, because I also hear this thing of good cop, bad cop, or he's trying to make me look like the bad cop. All those things are there, they're real, they are valid, but we cannot change. We cannot control what the other person decides to do. And so it's really a matter of being very clear about why you're doing what it is you're doing, and then consistently doing it. And it's an area that I really am passionate about. And if you would like a little bit more coaching, we can have 2 or 3 sessions to just give you a little bit, to sort of just strengthen you from within, so that you have that the resilience to keep doing what you need to do, because sometimes we just need that kind of support. So you can also reach out, and I know that contacts are being typed there, and so you should be able to get that. I have learned that I need to focus on the relationship and also to be self-aware. Thank you, Jackie. Felima, I have learned so much. I need the book. Yes, you go to drcaro.co.ke and you can get a copy of the book. We are, oh, okay. We're not allowed to ask. Mics are muted, although we had raised a question earlier on. Could you kindly just raise that question again, declutter with Reg? I can imagine that's Regina. Could you just type that question again? Make sure it comes to everyone, and then Wagare will give it attention. Give it to my attention. I'm just concerned that if we unmute your mics, then we might have to. There could be a lot of distractions. That's why we are asking to mute. So kindly re-ask that question, and then I can address it. Being self-aware in the analogy of a carpenter was a aha moment. Okay, remember the recorded session will be available. This is a real eye-opener. Thank you, Faith. It's about me and how I react or choose to respond to my children. You're very welcome, Faith. Yes, self-awareness, now you know. Josephine, very insightful indeed. Parenting is not for the faint-hearted, and none of us are faint-hearted, okay? That's why I say that we are great parents become. We are not born like that, we become. So even as we're thinking about not being faint-hearted, let's not arm ourselves and say, oh, now we need to be really, really tough and come at it with a lot of, no. Learn, grow into it. Show up as you are first, follow your instincts, and then allow all these other lessons to come along the way. Teenage tantrums from Lydia and how to cope with a teenager who refuses to clean her room and hygiene. Stay put, Lydia. We are going to talk about very specific behaviors and how to deal with them, and we actually will come to actual consequences. So check back with us in the next few sessions and we will do that. Zipporah, withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. How do we respond to this back is it actual spanking? Now, Zipporah, I usually say I'm not a Bible scholar, and I mean, I know my areas of expertise and strengths and all that. However, I have taken time to really unpack that verse, but I do not want to bring it up in this session. Hopefully, when we talk about it in the spank or not to spank, I will only tell you what I have read I don't even claim to be an authority there. So does it refer to actual spanking? Different people will say different things about spanking and about what that verse says. So if you just allow me not to address that in this one, if you see me on the side, I can share with you some of the resources that I have come across that really unpack that space. But then I'm not the spiritual authority in this area. If we just put our eyes away from spanking and all these things and focus on the relationship, then we release ourselves from all these many things that we are stuck up on, that I must use the spank, I must withdraw privileges, I must do all this. If we turn our eyes away from the strategy to the relationships, then we are free to do so many things, because now we are doing it with more confidence. Will you at some point talk about what kind of mistakes are acceptable from children at certain groups? Maybe we treat our children too harshly, as if they are older than they are. Actually, you know what, Dan? Oh, sorry, this was a direct message, but I guess it doesn't really reveal much. So actually, I don't talk about age appropriateness. And let me tell you, I really try to give information that is not out there. Okay, I try to get away from saying at this age, this is a developmental stage and this is what to expect, because for sure you would get that information. So apart from that, that's why I encourage people to go out and do research. But even as you're doing that, let's talk about the relationship, because that's what is important. So I will not talk about the age appropriateness of issues, but I will talk about how you need to show up as a parent, because that information is something that we really just need a lot of, nailing down on. I think my kids will get shocked when they see me not reacting, but responding. Yes, shock them. And they will want to be closer to you, because children respond to us when they feel connected to us. Okay, all these things that we are trying to get our children to do, step back, begin to be a responsive parent, okay? And then focus on the relationship, and you will be surprised the level of cooperation you'll get from your kids. Because even you, if you're employed, you're connected to a boss who is supportive to you, not the one who is always coming at you and telling you, you need to do all this. So we respond to people that we feel they are feeling us. They're human beings as well. So that's what they have. Then someone requested that I see the final slide. I don't know which final slide, my friend. I don't know if it's this one or this one. Okay, let's keep going. The one with the farmer carpenter. Okay, let's see. Okay, hopefully that one. So I hope you can be able to see it. Patience says my take home, responding rather than reacting. I'm going to be very intentional about this. Thank you, Patience. Thanks everyone for coming, for your comments, consistency, for one-on-one coaching. Oh, that's from my own. Very inspiring. My question, being friends to our children, thin line. Who is the parent? Being friends, yes, but I feel my children should also know that I'm more than a friend, but their parent. Of course, you're the person in authority. So make sure that they're aware. But even in the process of letting them know that you are the person in authority, are you also influencing them from a place of connection? Because if you want to influence them from a place of connection, then the qualities of a good friendship have to be used. So we need to use the qualities of a good friendship even in our relationships with our children. So I don't even think there's a thin line there. Okay, let's invite them with the qualities of a good friendship, with a good relationship, but let us remember that we are still the ones in authority and we can influence them. Remember, I said discipline is discipleship. Okay. So Munira, Mildred, enlightened, very insightful from Munira. Very welcome. Is there hope in influencing wayward adult children that is in their 20s? Yes, yes, yes. And I really also love to talk about parenting children, young adults. Remember I said full maturity of the brain doesn't happen until 25. So we still have opportunities to influence our children. It's harder when they are older. It's harder when they are older, but if you're showing up, if you're healing yourself, if you're self-aware, never too late. Please take this out. It is never too late to begin to make the right decisions when it comes to effective parenting. It's never too late, but it has to start with you. It has to start with you exploring yourself, looking at, am I feeling guilty? They are 24. They're still stuck in the house. What is it that I am telling myself I should have done? 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you able to go back to those places and forgive yourself? Forgive yourself and move forward so that you're leading your child from a place of clarity. Okay, thank you, Maria. Virginia says we also need to walk the talk as we nurture the kids. Of course, we need to walk the talk, and that's why I talked about relationships. I still have not seen a question from Reggie or Regina, so I don't know if is there anything I have missed. I think I started from somewhere in the middle. We still have a few minutes. Pausing sounds really ideal. I'm glad you're all learning. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to, I get so much energy from your comments as well. And I'm able to really interact better when I read your comments, and it also gives me a lot of just pleasure to see how you're taking this. Please give us your feedback, how we can do things differently. If you need us to slow down a little bit, the teacher in me, if the pace is good, it's good. Okay, so I'm trying to see what Reg was saying here, better relationships with our children. So you're telling me that I am the problem? Yes, sorry, but yes, in many cases we are. And if we are leading from a place of wholesomeness and awareness, then, because our children really learn from us, okay? So Elizabeth says, and the way I feel good after shouting, this is sad. Oh, yeah. Because it feels good in the moment, just like Regina is saying. So I just don't want to keep going back and forth. I think that we can close there if there are no other questions. Please, oh, maybe slow down a little bit. All right, for those of you taking notes. Okay, fine, notes taken. The recording will be shared for this one. Remember, this was a free session, but this is going to go on until the end of the month. So please make sure you register. If you already registered, thank you for the other 3 sessions. Go ahead and register with us. We've made it very easy for you to even pay for the sessions and all that. It makes it very, very easy. I would want to believe that this is the place I stop. Thank you, everybody. It's been such a joy, such a pleasure interacting with you. And please, let's keep these conversations on our social media pages. Let us know, let me know how you experience these sessions and what else you would want us to talk about. So take a note of your feedback. And now we can unmute you for those who want to just be able to say goodbye and scream. You can put on your videos, not really scream. I mean, I just kind of using that word, but yeah, for those of you who want just to say hello and all that, you can unmute you. Mangari, have you unmuted? Yeah. Okay, and then in another minute or so, we are going to close. So for those of you who need to leave, it's okay, you can leave. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Kwaheri.
everybody.
Harry.
No, stop looking.
Bye.
Bedroom.